Hi everybody, it's Stacey Calder from the Business Success Network and Magazine. I am so looking forward to this podcast today. My very special guest, Sas Huntwood, is in the room, or in the Zoom if you like. Sas, tell us a bit about you. Why have I dragged you here today?
It's a very good question. Why have you? Because I like the sound of my own voice. No, I love stories. So storytelling is my passion. My kind of mission in life is for people to tell stories and use stories to connect with other people. And that's why you've invited me in today. Well, I presume that's why.
It is, given that I sent you a message saying, come and tell some stories. Yeah, so this I keep saying mini series. It's not really a mini series anymore. It's grown from that now. So this series of the podcast then is all about using marketing assets to increase someone's credibility, to give them authority in their industry. And you do a lot of work within like the leadership, the training stuff. Tell us about, because you've got two companies, haven't you? You're
I
like
have.
you're a
Yeah.
collector of stories.
Like yourself, Stacey, I like to keep busy. So one is not enough. So let's have two companies. So yeah, we have Beyond Thought, which is a training organization that we've been running for 8 years, and we work with organizations to help improve their sales techniques and also their leadership. So work with leadership teams, and we use games. Games is a big thing, making things fun, experiential gaming, gamification, and underpinning that, of course, there's a lot of stories in there too. And then last year, we launched the Storytellers International, which is a storytelling business. And it's about capturing people's stories and their life stories and creating a beautifully designed book. A bit like kind of This Is Your Life, with lovely and wonderful photos in there too.
And they are beautiful as well. I've seen some of these and I've seen some of your clients, and they are always, they've got them held up and they're sharing them, and they are just so beautiful. So you are a woman of many talents, and you were in the magazine this issue as well. So it's like
getting published like that, getting kind of it's very exciting seeing your name.
And it is a fantastic article as well, again all around leadership. So yeah, well, this could be dangerous because we said we've got about 15, 16, 17 minutes. Me and you, I'm guessing we could tell stories all day, couldn't we? So let's go for it. Let's do this. So as I've been asking all my guests for this series, there was 3 questions. So one was, tell us about you and your experience, which we've kind of covered, but what is it about storytelling that you love so much?
I think from a young age, for me, telling stories, I was a bit of a clown and a joker in the classroom. And if I found things difficult, I'd like to make people laugh. And I did that through telling stories. And I love comic books at a young age as well. And then just throughout my life, I've enjoyed telling stories and hearing stories. And then last year, or a couple of years ago, my daughter and I, we published a children's book. And I love that whole process of writing together. And I'm very passionate about people just everybody's unique. Everybody is unique in this world, and therefore your story is unique. And I'm very passionate that people hear and share those stories, because often we're quite humble about about our stories and why is it special? Why would anyone want to hear it? And that's kind of that's the place I come from.
Honestly, it's fantastic, and I could listen to you all day. Like I've heard you in networking meetings where you do short snippets of stories, but there's just some brilliant stories within you, Sas. It's fantastic, and you always find some great, you'll find facts, you'll find the national days, and you tell these stories around them. It is brilliant. So then, how can somebody use your expertise around storytelling? Then how can they implement these things into their own business to give themselves the credibility, or be that authority figure?
It's a great question. I think firstly, be authentic self, be yourself. Don't try to be someone else. It's great to take tips from other people and watch great storytellers and model kind of maybe some of their behaviors and the structure of storytelling, but it's got to be you. It's got to be authentically you. That would be my first tip. The second tip, when you're telling a story, share a little bit about yourself and your story with your market, your potential clients, because people want to build a relationship with you. And I say stories enable connection points. So if you share a little bit of story about yourself, I'm not showing necessarily your whole back history, but a little bit about yourself, a little story about yourself, you're more likely to connect with your audience. They're more likely to see part of you. And that's how you build a relationship with your potential market. That would be my second tip. another point I'd say is make sure that it's true. Unless you're telling fiction, it's really important that the stories that you tell are true, because people see through falsehoods, whether they're online, social media, or whether they're face to face. That it's really important that they are true. Unless, to say, you're writing fiction, then that's fine.
And do you know what, you're absolutely right. Obviously I do a lot of social media for myself and for clients, and it's always those posts where you kind of tell those stories, those little snippets. I love behind the scenes stuff, because people are nosy, they want to know this stuff, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's again, when I'm thinking of putting a story out there, it's I want to add value to someone, and I'm thinking the objective of the story. Do I want to entertain? Do I want to amuse? Do I want to warn? So it could be about warning about potential dangers. Do I want to scare? Do I want to educate? So there's different types of stories depending on your objective of what that story is going to be used. We've been using stories for centuries as human beings. Orally, we used to tell stories. We have now digital stories. You have the printed story. You use pictures, dance, all these types of ways of telling a story. But there's an objective to that. So if you're putting a story together for your business or social media, or even if you're going to networking, what's the objective of that story? What do you want people to know when they come away from listening to it?
Absolutely, there's some great advice there, and I hadn't even got onto the last question of 3 top tips, and you've already shared some, which is like, honestly, this get your notepads out, guys, because this is going to be it's going to be cram-packed full of advice, I think. So, and actually, speaking of notepads, there, you are really good at in networking events of capturing what people are saying and recording those down. So, and I'm not talking about for your own notes, I think everyone after this pandemic is used to Zoom by now. That chat function, you are so good at just listening to other people's stories and capturing that and those key points that I wish you were at all of my meetings, because you just, honestly, I wouldn't need to take any notes anymore.
You know what it is my mother sending me to typing to lessons when I was 15, insisting that I went to touch type, and I hated it. But now I'm so thankful that she did, because I can touch type. But I've also developed the ability to be able to talk to you at the same time as typing. And particularly this last 12 months, I think, because we've been forced online so much, to be able to listen at the same time as capturing the information I need to really quickly, because we're capturing stories all the time. And I've got used to doing that and hearing people's different nuances in the way the words they use, rather than translating it into my own.
Do you know what? And that is a skill that, I mean, I didn't know that about you. So that's just amazing. But wow, maybe your mum knew something we didn't about pandemics and
maybe
getting the skill set in. There's stories around that as well. Looking at it from your person, from your own business, having those skills where you can touch type and you can listen while people are giving you that information must be a key part of your own business, let alone a tip that you can give other people there. So that's amazing.
Yeah. Definitely from the capturing stories from people, it's being able to capture their voice. It's really important that it's their voice, and it's their words and it's their tone that comes through to the written word. So when you read something, like if you read Stephen Fry's novels, it's Stephen Fry, you can hear, or Stephen King, you can hear almost that he's talking to you. And that's really important when you're telling a story. It's coming back to your authentic self. It's your words, it's your language, and nuances and your tone of voice that comes through in it.
And you've worked in the corporate industry for a while. Do you think that corporates can struggle sometimes with giving that authentic voice, because they are, I think for such a long time they've been, they are a corporate, they have to be that corporate brand. There are businesses out there that almost hide behind that brand rather than kind of opening their doors and experimenting with this storytelling. So what would you recommend to kind of a corporate? Do you think, is there more of a worry with it? Do they need to tell more stories, do you think?
Yes, I think there's a huge, if you just, Google business storytelling or kind of look at the Harvard Business Review, or other kind of anywhere really where they're promoting storytelling within business. And I think particularly in business and corporates, they have a tendency, firstly, to use too much jargon and terminology, which they think makes them look really credible and professional. But it doesn't. It separates you from your audience, from your market. So that's my first thing I think corporate could really do with looking at. The second thing is data storytelling. There's a lot of information. We're in the data age. And how do you tell a story using a lot of statistics and data that's not so dry and turns your audience off? And it's not death by PowerPoint, lots of, kind of slides. and we've all been there and sat there going through presentations with someone going bleep, bleep, bleep. And you're like, oh.
You can hear them. Next slide, please. And you think, oh.
They just throw figures at you and go, that doesn't mean anything to me. So tell me a story about what the figures mean. And there's so many different great storytelling structures you can use to tell a great story. But, data used in an infographic, for example, in a meaningful way, tell a story about what actually that data means to me as someone who's sitting there listening to you. And I think corporates, particularly the bigger giants, are not good at that. Some of the more innovative, companies coming up, particularly in like the tech sector and the medical sector, artificial intelligence, all those things are really kind of up and coming sectors, are really good at that. They're really good at using, great stories to connect with the audience.
And you're right, and we can see the brands on social media that are engaging with storytelling. It wasn't long ago that I was engaging with Weetabix about that awful tweet they put on about baked beans on your Weetabix, but that was, and actually the way all those other big brands engaged with that was storytelling in 140 characters or whatever it was. But the story that then led on to that, it got in people's minds thinking, on a Saturday morning, am I going to seriously give Weetabix and beans to my kids and all that kind of thing? So I think that was a brilliant example of how big brands can use storytelling. Actually, we talk about the negatives, but some of them get it right.
They do, and that was probably a throwaway idea. That was a throwaway idea in a kind of brainstorm meeting. Why don't we just try this something a bit crazy? And someone like, okay, let's run with it, see what's happened. And often those are the best ideas.
Yeah, and I have to say, actually, one of the brands that replied to that was Innocent Smoothies, and then Weetabix kind of grabbed them, poured an innocent drink on it. But if you look, I'm a big fan of Innocent Smoothies.
They're very good.
Their socials, they always tell a story. That stapler on floor 10 or whatever it is gets up to some really naughty stuff, and it makes, I don't care about smoothies really in general, but if I'm going to buy one, you go to Innocent because you think of that stapler, and it works, doesn't it? So
it does.
Absolutely right. So last kind of points then. I asked you to think about 3 top tips for using storytelling within businesses. How can people get the most from it then? You give us your top 3 business tips.
So my first thing with storytelling is think about the customer, the audience first, not the point necessarily you want to get across first. Think about who you're talking to. What's their values, what's their beliefs, what's their background, what's their experience with this particular, with you, or this particular product or service before you even start putting together a story. My second tip is have a structure. It just, even in 140 characters, whatever is Twitter allows now, whatever number of characters you're allowed, think about a structure, a start, middle, and end. People are really good at, the start. What's the backstory? Introduce your character. Middle. What was the challenge or the issue someone's got that you maybe helped them with? But more importantly, what was the trigger? What made them come and talk to you? Because everybody has a trigger at which point we realize a problem is a big problem and now is a priority. And finally, what's the solution? How did you make an impact on that person? That's a great story to tell. And my last top tip is, when did you last look at your About Us bit page on your website?
Oh, good one.
Or on your socials, and go, have you told a story in there? Have you showed a bit of yourself, a bit of vulnerability, a bit of you, your backstory, and maybe why you started that company? That would be my kind of top tips.
Oh, Sas, they are some brilliant top tips as well. Absolutely fantastic. I am so pleased that you came on today. We could talk about stories. We could share stories all day, but I'm not going to keep you all day now. All I'm going to ask of you now is, where can people find you?
They can find me, best place to find me on LinkedIn. So I'm Sas Huntwood. There's only one Sas Huntwood, thankfully, on LinkedIn. Or, feel free to connect with that. Or we've got the Storytellers .biz is our website, and we've got Beyond Thought International as well. So, find us on any kind of social platform.
Absolutely. And we will drop the links as well so that people can do that. Sas, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure today. I am I should have got you to prepare a story or something that we could have just ended with, but that would have been me being organised. So I don't suppose you've got one to hand, have you?
I can tell you a quick story. This is about a personal story. So this is my great grand Alice, who inspired me to set up the Storytellers, and she told me how she met my great granddad Ted Hunt, who was in the Coldstream Guards. She was a maid, and she was on her day off with her best friend in Eton, and she said there's a bridge that crosses across Eton and Windsor and connects the two. And she said, the next soldier who walks across the bridge, I'm going to marry. And Ted Hunt, in his guard uniform, walked across the bridge, and ultimately they got married.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'm so glad we ended on a story, Sas, and a beautiful family story it was too. You've been an absolute delight to have it on the show today. Yeah, we'll just chat in the background for ages. But on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much for coming, and I will speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Stacey.